And we'll get started. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I know a few of you are just coming back from break, so we'll give everybody another moment to join us and begin our session shortly. Thank you so much. Welcome, welcome. I see all the numbers climbing up in our session. Welcome, everybody. Just wait another moment as I'd said, people coming just off break, probably grabbing a quick beverage or a snack, and then we'll begin. Well, I will begin, as I know we do want to get started, and it is first of all my great honor and pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Detective Constable Mike Payne, who has worked with the Waterloo Regional Police Services for 27 years as a police officer. He is currently assigned as an elder abuse investigator with the Waterloo Regional Police Services and has investigated and risk assessed over 800 complaints of elder abuse in his career as an elder abuse investigator. His police experience also includes general patrol, community development, general investigations, homicide, and communication center and major frauds. He is currently the vice chair of the law enforcement agencies with seniors, partners, and protecting seniors, and he is also the chair of the Waterloo Wellington Elder Abuse Prevention Council. Detective Constable Payne is a University of Waterloo graduate, and he obtained the Osgood Hall certificate in elder law in 2021. He is an advocate for capacity building within the Waterloo region to prevent elder abuse and ensure seniors thrive with honor, dignity, and respect. And I am honored to call Mike Payne a friend and a colleague. So over to you, Detective Constable Payne. We look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. And the formalities aside, Mike is fine. To everyone on the call, I am so thankful for Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario for having me today. Those introductions are always a bit much, but everyone, I do bring you information that is well sourced, it is well experienced, and this is a perspective on dealing with elder abuse and risk that I think is important that we need to share, and I'm looking forward to this session. For most of you across Ontario, Waterloo region is west of Toronto. We are 3 growing urban centers, multi-diverse cultural communities of Cambridge, Kitchener, and Waterloo. We have 3 townships of rural in nature with small pockets of towns in those. So a diverse community, and it's something that we've been servicing from a police service from the elder abuse and senior support perspective since 2006. And I want to drive you to our perspective and how we got here. Our history was originally in 2006, some champions, some stakeholders from Home Care, Community Care Access Center at the time, and our police service saw gaps in how we respond to seniors at risk in the community. A pilot project for the Elder Abuse Response Team was started, rooted out of the foundation of restorative justice of family and conflict. And we co-located out of a family violence project at the time in Waterloo region. So 1 building, we had intimate partner violence investigators, we had social workers, and we had the Elder Abuse Response Team. In 2015 to 2016, this partnership moved to our headquarters campus and reporting and working under a new branch called the Special Victims Unit. The team was rebranded. There was some opinion-based research done. The abuse connotation when we came to the door dealing with families in conflict put them on the offensive, that we were claiming they were abusive instead of just supporting them. So with the renaming, we became the Senior Support Team, and we are currently located in our Special Victims Unit, which is our major crimes, sex crimes investigations, and our human trafficking unit, as well as our Senior Support Elder Abuse Investigation Unit. I want to really get into Elder Abuse Collaboration 101, police and community partners. The police cannot do this, as we found back in 2006, by ourselves. We needed to wrap resources and supports around our seniors living in abuse and elder abuse situations. So our model is taken out of the World Health Organization, endorsed in 2009 by the Senate Committee Report on Aging, which is elder abuse. The definition is before us. It's that person of trust. It's that care provider. It's that friend that they are relying on, or it could be a paid caregiver. You'll notice in this definition, it is not the scammers. We know that scams have really ravaged our seniors, and the stats are significant. I have had the opportunity to investigate those as a major crime investigator in the fraud side of my career. But we know elder abuse is those persons of trust relationships, which are very, they're complex, and the response to it needs to be comprehensive. What do we do as investigators and our partners? And I'll get into our partnership and what that looks like with Home and Community Care Access Center. So the police role in our model is the safety of the victims first, gathering information for our investigations, documenting evidence, possibly arresting and charge, and supporting the prosecution. These are few and far between, these situations where we're arresting, charging, and prosecuting. In all of our cases, in those 800 or so that I spoke about, I'm safety planning. I'm making referrals to safety plans, especially when there's situations where the senior does not want to move forward in a charge or an evidence investigation capacity, and they decline to formally move forward for a prosecution. We safety plan. We put boundary setting in place, social workers, to assist in mitigating the risks identified. Our partners, which is our Home and Community Care Access Center partners, assist us with the early stages of the risk. So we're risk assessing together. We're reviewing if there's increased calls for service and sharing calls for service, our police type calls for service, ambulance, disturbances within the home. We're sharing that information together. Our team also offers supports for missing persons with dementia. We have taken on in the past 2 to 3 years supporting those situations to give resources and supports to seniors and families who are struggling with dementia and missing person type situations. And our home care partners have experience with the complications and the issues when it comes with dementia and dealing with our families and victims. We've identified a long time ago in 2006, I keep going back to our roots, believe it or not, I worked back in 2006, and policing, we move around in our careers. And in 2006, I came into the unit, and when we had this puzzle, we had police in the middle with the senior. We soon realized from our work and our practice that the police weren't in a position to fix, either through the criminal code or provincial offense situations acts, to fix the situation. We needed more stakeholders in the puzzle. You'll see financial and legal. It could be referring to a power of attorney through lawyers. We've had victims over the years in our cases saying, I sought some direction and counsel from my faith community. It could be primary care and dealing with the doctor, sharing the risk with the doctor, sometimes with consent from the victims, but sometimes the risk is so significant that as a police officer, I'm bound by my duty to share the risk information with the other stakeholders. Our home and community care support service partner has been at the forefront in dealing with these situations way back in 2006. As you remember, they were a key stakeholder in coming to our police service saying, how can we do this better? So it just ties into the importance of community response over all these years as we've been trying to deal with this. What's our partnership look like? Because you've heard me touch on the partnership. We're the special victim unit working as a senior support team. There's 2 WRPS, Waterloo Regional Police Service, detective constables. There's a home community care support service, senior at risk consultant, previous care coordinator, nurse, now it's a social worker, highly experienced and trained, dealing with complex situations. We share in an office. You kind of see some office behind me here. There's 2 desks to your right, and we have open conversations and communication on cases and files that we're dealing with. What do? We, as a police service, are bound to investigate criminally. We have to ensure the integrity of our files are sound, which means if we have witnesses, will they provide statements? If we have victims, what does that look like in supporting them? If there's a criminal investigation, what evidence do we have? If it's a financial investigation, am I going to the banks for records? Am I writing warrants? Am I arresting? Are we putting people on terms or undertakings for that time out in regards to a case before the courts as or a prosecution that has to sort through what happened here? We get consultations regularly saying, this is what I have. There's no names are provided, but this is a scenario I'm dealing with. What should we do? Sometimes it's just a police perspective. Sometimes it's a team perspective where the home care partner would be able to consult on it. Our direct interventions are based on risk received. Is it a person who is in a neglect situation? Is it a self-neglect type situation? We're involved in going out as investigators and as partners with home care to intervene in the risk identified. Education and training is something that we've always been doing. We need to build capacity. Remember, it's a community response into situations of abuse and elder abuse. And I can't emphasize enough, in all the cases that we will come across, we will safety plan. We could safety plan from the financial side. What prevention is in place at the bank? Is there a need for a power of attorney? Is there a need for the bank to be informed to exercise their due diligence in regards to the risks that are happening? Maybe we make a referral to social work for more extensive safety planning, boundary setting with that son, daughter, grandchild who's taking advantage of their vulnerable seniors' finances or just their kindness. So these are the things that we do as a team, as an investigative body, as a response program to seniors at risk dealing with elder abuse. How do we do it? We risk assess based on what comes in. We prioritize. Do we need to go out and see them? Are there already eyes and ears in the home? Is there a home care partner in there? Is there other supports that they're attending, seniors day programs, memory clinics, as you're seeing? Is there eyes and ears to have eyes on the risk? We notify the stakeholders of the risks. We make referrals to social work. You hear me say that a lot. We notify the primary care teams, the doctors, the special geriatric specialists. Sometimes we pull them in through the home community care access partner, and we're letting all the stakeholders know of the concerns raised. Those stakeholders are often ones who make referrals to us. Sometimes, remember, those consultations for lack of getting consent just to speak to the issues. Sometimes the risk is significant where we have to act on the risk, and there's this conversation when we're talking about the risks that are being discussed. A quick scenario, going back 2021, we had a memory clinic that was struggling to deal with a family. The elderly gentleman was struggling with, we find out later, a delirium. He was living on a rural property where he had access to firearms and thought people were coming on his property and were going to harm him. Initially, the clinic called us and did not have consent, but based on the risk identified, firearms in the home, we contacted the family and ended up with a full disclosure and a full intervention where we got support for the elderly gentleman and were able to restrain his firearms for the safekeeping of the public. So depending on risk, that's how we can work with stakeholders. Our check wells, so we get people saying, I haven't seen Mrs. Smith for the last, and I'll use Mrs. Smith quite often, the last 2 or 3 days. You need to go and check on her. And there's often some confusion on that, and police services are often at a challenge to deal with these. Our only authorities are under the Mental Health Act. Sometimes we'll go and with EMS, we end up with a social admission to hospitals, but they're always very challenging when there is resistance by the elderly person. Well-founded information comes from the community. It could be a family member, it could be a neighbor. I've put impact response, which is our mental health support program that is integrated now more than ever, I know in our region, in our response to mental health type calls for service. We are supporting and we are endorsing, and I would fact all our attendees to use the resources from impact, those experts in dealing with mental health and the challenges of dementias and Alzheimer's in the check wells with officers. I remember doing check wells of the senior way back when. I would look in the fridge for medication. I would check for food. I would have some small conversation about how they're doing today, maybe get myself into the bathroom to see how they were coping. And if I found that everything was pretty much from my limited experience and limited understanding of in the moment impairments or cognitive impairments, I would have to move on to not take any interventions. The new model, the officer and an impact Canadian mental health response jointly going together, or it could be with our home care partner. They have the expertise in regards to those situations to refer to those specialist programs for that consistent follow-up where it's needed for a special geriatric response. There's a program that's come over the past couple of years. It's growing and well-funded in our region. It's the Community Paramedicine Program. We make referrals to these this wonderful program. They can refer concerns to us. Again, eyes and ears in the community, all on the same page of what is elder abuse, what are the risks identified, and who can do what dealing with the risk. The paramedicine program in our region has grown leaps and bounds and is well funded and continues to be a stakeholder in our community to keep seniors, especially seniors, safe in their homes. What are our investigations? You heard me touch on them. I investigate theft by person holding a power of attorney, theft and in possession of proceeds over 5,000 and under. We deal with assaults. I deal with sexual assaults, often working closely with my special victims unit investigators. Unauthorized use of credit card. It's the grandson, the son, the daughter, taking the credit card, tap, away they go, getting some groceries, but then using it for themselves. Robbery. Robbery, you say, Mike, what is that? Using physical force to grab the debit or bank card and using it for your addictions, your use. So the son, in a couple of scenarios, would physically restrain the elderly mother to get the credit cards or the debit cards, and away to the races they went on using those cards. We've successfully prosecuted all of those. Our foundation, you have to remember too, is at a restorative justice, so the healing of those relationships. We offer a mediation through our community partner, community justice initiatives, but there's significant challenges in getting there. We're often dealing with subjects or accused that are suffering substance abuse, mental health, and in cases where they're not taking responsibility, we can't get to a proper diversion of apology or even saying I was wrong. So we have some significant challenges over the years in getting situations to a restorative justice model. So, and they do end up going through the traditional justice system. The victims, the elderly victim, is always given the option during the course of their intake, their investigation, and if charges are available, that they can approach a restorative justice type model where there could be a healing of what's happened. And I like to hear during my investigation, or part of my investigation, some responsibility being taken by the subject or the accused, which I can take to the Crown Attorney, that can then consider a diversion out of the traditional justice system. All of these are cases that we've investigated over the years, and I've laid successful charges in all of these. We don't lay a lot of charges. The victims in these cases have a right to refuse and control at all stages of the investigation what happens with their information. And they're given those resources and information at the front end saying, right at the beginning, Mrs. Smith, you have control. There is no mandatory charging or reporting in Ontario for situations of elder abuse. The report of elder abuse needs to come out of the mandatory reports. Just a quick caveat is in care homes, retirement and long-term care, those mandatory report sections of their acts. Sharing and privacy, how do we do it? We get the consent of the client. We have a memorandum of understanding since 2006 from both agencies, Waterloo Regional Police Service and Home and Community Care Support Services. It was revisited and re-signed in 2022. Our legislation, the MFIPA, the PHIPA, trumps all MOUs. We're skilled in always revisiting MFIPA legislation and the Police Services Act, which I work with in supporting victims in investigations. And we always fall back with legal direction and advice on Privacy Health Information Protection Act, PHIPA, and the sections in there during a lawful investigation and how you can share the risk information in immunity. Sharing good faith to deal with the risk. This is always a challenge. It's a challenge as management changes. It's a challenge with staffing as it changes, having a foundation and knowledge of those working practices. The benefits of the partnership, information sharing. We get a good picture of the risk before us. The police, as I mentioned at the beginning, gets the history of the calls for service. We know the knowledge of the laws, what evidence we need, and we know how to deal with the risk that's before us. Home and community care obtains and understands the medical information. They have access to home community care based on the risk of the client that's before us and other partners in the community. They can reach out in that circle of care on what is the risk identified and what are we doing about the risk. Again, information is shared based on the risk through PHIPA, Police Services Act on my end, and other privacy legislation that's before us. It's a one-stop collection of risk and prevents re-victimization. It prevents, and what we found a lifetime ago in the Family Violence Project, the one-stop intervention, is you didn't have to go to 3 different buildings or 2 different buildings and tell your story over and over and over, therefore becoming a victim again and again and again. We give them wider options during our investigation. What would you like? What do you need? What services and supports? You already have these. Would you consider this? We really work hard since 2006 to have direct referrals to us, because we know for seniors, a uniform officer and 2 cruisers showing up is it can be traumatic. It can be very stressful. So we try and have intakes, we call them, come direct to our team. And we have some forms and some ways we do that. We're detectives in plain clothes, a softer approach when we deal with our victims. The community knows they can come direct to us instead of trying to jump through the hoops of our 911 communication centers, which is really problematic as our 911 centers are overburdened on a 24/7 basis. So they can come direct to us, and we have forms and program or ways that they can get information to us so we can triage it and act on it. We share education. So our home community care partner trains her people on intake. I train our people on intake. And some on their start, I say intake, when they start, new employees, or updating training for our employees. We train together on the prevention and building capacity of elder abuse in our community. Shared knowledge. So our stakeholders, our home and community care partner will know if we're making a referral to the public guardian. There might be a situation where it's a consent capacity board referral. We will share and sign risks to primary care providers or specialists based on what we know. We will share the risks and information to the special geriatric service programs. Maybe there's a need for Behavior Supports Ontario in this situation, often home community care access programming. Do we reach out to Alzheimer's Society and local senior day programs? Do we make referrals? Does the family need to go to the Law Society? Do they have issues with getting estate planning, or do they just need mediation? And again, if there's a criminal process, I can update the investigation, the stakeholders on process. Maybe there's terms I'm a substitute decision maker who's been removed based on an assault allegation. I will share that information with the care team so they can alternatively find a substitute decision maker to help as a primary caregiver. Challenges, many challenges. Right to refuse, victim-driven and directed. Yes, Mrs. Smith, he took $210,000 from you. I've got a wonderful power of attorney, I call it linear file, where it's clear he took your money and he spent it. That's fine, Mike, I don't want anything done. He's my son, I'm supporting him his whole life. He's went through a divorce. Many reasons provided that are insightful, and we have to respect that. This could happen even at a prosecution stage where the victim is insightful and says, I no longer want my son prosecuted or my daughter prosecuted. Information sharing is ongoing challenges. The format and the privacy of sharing of privacy health information. Can it be in an email? Can it only be in a hard file? Can it be is there a secure server? We've constantly run into the problem of we're two organizations and we don't have a shared network. So we file, we communicate in silos, but then we try and share together. It's always problematic, and what does that format look like? And it's always being revisited, and there's some challenges. There's no specific police enforceable laws in Ontario for elder abuse or older adult maltreatment. In the States, there's the Adult Protection Society, I believe, the APS agencies across state per state. I'm not advocating or saying that we need police enforceable laws in Ontario. I would advocate and say that we need to tighten up our Substitute Decisions Act. And if someone is signing up for power of attorney, should they be on a registry? Should they know what they're signing up for to account for those funds? Do they know what those documents mean and the high level of fiduciary duty that is incumbent on them? They don't. I can say in a lot of my cases, they have no clue, or they're using that tool, that POA, for nefarious means. There's some challenges with the Substitute Decisions Act that I'd like to see tightened up. I don't know if we'll ever see it in my lifetime, which would be registries, possibly some better legislation or wording in there to give clear indication to a POA who's managing finances on this is what I can and cannot do. Yes, there's packages from the ministry, I totally understand, but when I have people in front of me, they often don't have a clue what that document means. There's some challenges where Monday to Friday, sometimes we're 8 to 4, sometimes we're 7 to 5, but then we have to make sure our frontline colleagues and supports are out there doing everything else and getting that information to us when those situations happen outside of regular hours for us. The size of the unit over the past couple of years has really been a challenge. There's been times when it was just myself in this unit. There's been times when there's been 2 people in the unit, sometimes with no home care partner, sometimes with no police officer partner. Every industry, the healthcare and policing are going through challenges in regards to staffing. And we see this in our capacity levels within our police service and in our team. What else do we do? This is the stop. I'm just about done. We do more. We handle all care home mandatory report intakes and investigations. We are working hard to divert all these calls for service from uniform response. There's problems with the legislation and the reports to police. We're getting 50 plus a year, 0.1 result in charges. That may constitute legislation, which may constitute a criminal offense, is problematic. We're often pulled into situations that is purely a ministry care plan issue. So there is some significant challenges in regards to the police managing mandatory reporting in long-term care and retirement homes. But we do it. We have a diverted program where there's an intake, it comes direct to our team, and we prioritize what we need to do with those matters, majority of which is non-criminal in nature. In 2021, we took on follow-up support, reactive prevention of missing persons with dementia. We follow up with services and supports after a crisis incident where a person has gone missing. We offer Alzheimer's Society programming, social work for caregiver burnout, social work for crisis management, and we make a referral to our Vulnerable Persons Registry, which is a regional program that Waterloo Regional Police is as a key stakeholder on the steering committee, which is a VPR program where we can access information to help locate missing persons with dementia or any person who goes missing with a behavioral problem. Those are our additional duties that we take on. Thoughts for the future for all of you? I'd like to give you some thoughts. Our model isn't the perfect model, but I know a community engagement type model is important. You need to see the whole picture. Is it through your community officers in your communities? There's community engagement units. I know our police services has this. You need to have investigators who are dedicated elder abuse investigators. They're complex. OPC does have a very good program. We continue to develop that program. Our partners in LEAPS, as well as others, my colleagues, we train and we teach on that program. OPC is a wonderful partner for helping build capacity in dealing with these complex cases. I see a vision out there for integrated mobile police and crisis teams, CMHA teams, working with these complex situations. Maybe they're the front line of response to elder abuse type vulnerable person cases. There is significant growth in that across Ontario. I did read the Mobile Crisis Response Team, a framework for Ontario. Is there significant growth in funding, which could be a way to better support our seniors in the community. These CMH teams do have special geriatric training. And that's just from my own experience in dealing with these workers in our community. That's it. That's my perspective as a police officer with 27 years, and a majority of which I've dealt with either frauds, but most of it's been dealing with seniors at risk and elder abuse cases during that whole time. So thank you. Those are my thoughts. I'm more than available for questions. Mary can walk us through those, and I can't thank everyone enough for being here today. What a great day. I saw the list of speakers and it was fantastic. So thank you to Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario, and Marta and her team knocked it out of the park again. So Mary, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mike. And we've got close to about 150 people in the room with us right now. So we've got a lot of questions. There was a lot of activity in the chat box right now. Many thank you, great information, comments coming through. So I'll get right into it. And in summary, we've had a lot of people say, wow, I didn't even know this existed in policing services. How is it that we can get this happening in our communities where right now we have no support for older adults whatsoever?
Yeah, great question. And we get this a lot. There is no template across Ontario on how you have servicing your seniors or your vulnerables. We're advocated and we lobby all the time for some standardization in regards to that, but I don't know if we'll ever see it. How do you do it? You start with a conversation. You have to identify champions in your community. I've given you some tips to community resource officers. Maybe the front door is to a police station is talking to the community resource officer that's out doing a prevention. I know budgets have shrunk across Ontario, and those type of departments have shrank. I know in our department they have, but we now have community engagement officers whose mandates are dealing with mental health, youth, and our homeless issues. So a conversation with a community resource officer, a letter to the chief's office we've seen in the past, right? If you have a local elder abuse network in your community, which we have a strong one in Waterloo region, do you know who they are? Do they know how to network with the police service? Because officers across Ontario are often liaisons in those networks. So I'd encourage your local elder abuse prevention, your networks, which Mary is very familiar with. So there is social work programs across Ontario that liaise with police services. There is dedicated social work and police officer programs. There's one in Durham. Ours is a different type of model, but there is programs across Ontario. How do you get it? Through the front door of a community resource, relationship building or networking in your community, or a straight out letter to a chief. And consider those community mental health impact type programs when they start up. Put seniors at the forefront of those responses. I think there's a model there that could really get things moving.
Well, thank you, Mike. Next question, a few people have asked this as well, is, you know, you're an experienced officer over 27 years in the field. How do you feel what's going to be needed for new officers, young officers starting out in this role? They may be, you know, coming out to calls that could be elder abuse related, and this is their first time, you know, looking at something like this. How do you feel, or what are your thoughts on this? What do they need to support their role as well?
Training, and we do have programs. Durham Region offers a really good frontline program. Our police service used to offer a frontline program where we train new officers hired on indicators and flags and things to do when you're dealing with seniors in the community. And remember, Ontario Police College is actively involved, and that's our training body, and actively involved in a program where it's investigations. So twofold. At the front end, for uniform response, there's programming out there. I know my colleague in Durham is very busy flying around Ontario and doing training. We do have a virtual training module where we can go in and learn about elder abuse, learn about vulnerable adults, learn about Alzheimer's type society programming and finding your way packages. So there's your own independent learning. And then at your next level, we create, Ontario Police College has an elder abuse investigations course. And in that is higher level advanced training, which brings in your financial, which brings in your capacities, which brings in bruising training, which brings in the next level of education. So we're in a good spot right now. Yes, there's gaps across Ontario in training, maybe at different provincial models, but we're okay. If you ask for it, there's a program out there that would help with giving some capacity and understanding on how to deal with vulnerable adults and elders.
Thank you. Next question. A few people again have asked, Mike, in your experience, when you've seen the abuser that has been charged, it's been proven they have committed financial abuse, how often will the money be paid back, and what happens if they don't have the money to pay back?
Great question. So in a couple of cases, I had a really good case and the money was paid back. We have tools within our investigations where we can restrain and go find money. If they're proceeds or offense-related property, we can ask the courts to seize money. And we did that. So we found money. In the other cases where there's the robbery scenario, where there's the unauthorized use of credit card, those are for vices, gambling, cigarettes, alcohol, where there's no money to begin with. There's very little money. They're using the funds of the seniors, usually on limited pensions. So we often ask for restitution orders. We'll put a restitution order on the subject or the accused. But yeah, there's a gap in getting the funds when there was no money there to begin with. We have victim services. There is certain compensation funds for violent type offenses that can be written through victim services and different ministries for some compensation for injuries, but those are few and far between. In the financial cases, which is the bulk of our cases, we see restitution not met, even though an order is in place. In the good cases, remember, we can go get the money. I can go find that it landed in the bank account. I can go see that it paid a credit line. Therefore, the credit line can go back up while the money comes back. And those cases are quite satisfying.
Well, thank you.
Still wouldn't say sorry though, Mary, to his mom, but paid
No,
back the money and he didn't do anything wrong. Did I
no,
say that out loud?
no, nobody heard you. And Mike, another question about what happens with investigations in long-term care when we're looking at assault or sadly sometimes even death, if it's resident to resident and one of those residents or even both of them may have dementia.
Really problematic. In cases of death, I hate to say it, the coroner's involved. So the coroner comes in and would take carriage of the investigation, sometimes pulling in our major crimes, sometimes our office to assist with those investigations. We've had the Crown attorneys ask for an investigation to determine criminal culpability. Problematic when there's evidence of incapacity in a long-term care home. We like to get the information, I hate to say, the risk early so we can have a conversation. Is there criminal culpability here? There isn't. What are we doing from a ministry's perspective in managing that risk? Are we putting one-on-one in? Are we doing certain flags in the hall, wandering flags, different things that can be done from a risk management perspective on the home? And we're very honest, the home and the ministry's business is to manage the risks within the home. We're looking for criminal blame. So there's this, what can we do when you have significant cognitive impairments? But what we do offer is a thorough investigation. Give me a report. Let me talk to witnesses. I'm not going to interview a clearly cognitively impaired victim or subject just for the sake of finding out. If there's evidence of incapacity, I'm satisfied because we know it will cause significant stress if you put in front of them and you're asking questions that you know they can never answer. So a thorough investigation at the front end based on what happened, determining if there's criminal blame, and then making sure it's reported on thoroughly.
Thank you. And last question before we wrap up this amazing session, because we could probably go until 7 this evening. Some of our participants are asking, what are some of your top tips to be able to speak to an older adult, knowing there is financial abuse happening, but they're obviously very frightened about any type of retaliation from the abuser, especially if it's their own children? In your experience, what's a way to start a conversation to be able to let the older adult know by reporting they're doing the right thing because it's going to protect them ultimately?
Always a challenge when we're risk assessing our cases. And way back when, it's the biggest thing that would keep me up at night, saying, what am I going to do if they make a disclosure? So for one, it's the approach. It's the plainclothes direct to the police. It's not a uniform officer coming up. It's possibly a nurse care coordinator, or a social worker now, and a plainclothes detective who will speak with you in your place of choice. We will not come to you if it puts you at risk. We assess that. Could we meet you at the mall, which we've done in the past? Even better, could I meet you at the doctor's office because you made a disclosure to the doctor who talked to the social worker who talked to you and said, yeah, I'd like to talk to the senior support team. So we meet them at the doctor's appointment. So therefore, no disclosure made to the family on what happened here. We give them their options. We talk about what's it look like. Is there power of attorneys in place? We let them know that you have a right of all your information. Just because you're talking to us doesn't mean I'm phoning the other half of the family saying, talk to your mom, you got to do something about it. No, fully informed, fully supported. That social work, maybe with the doctor, we bring in our own program, talks about boundary setting. Yeah, this is happening. How can we limit the risk? Not thousands for gambling a month, 400 or 500. And in the worst case scenario, know if something happens physical or something happens where you're afraid, you can contact uniform officers and they will come and support you. Let's call it a fact to us folks here. Sometimes we need to deal with the crisis and that rips the Band-Aid, which means we can get in and offer intense supports to make this a better situation. Remember that honor, dignity, and respect as they move forward away. And there's tough times in those 6 months. As long as they're empowered and given all the information, we can support them through this rough road. So yeah, those are tough situations. It has kept us up at night, me thinking about, could we do it better? But empowerment, often in elder abuse, we all know you're taking away the power. We want to empower them along the way and giving them their options, ensuring their privacy as well.
Thank you. Mike, a huge thank you for everyone who's in our session right now, for all the seniors you've been able to help and reach out to and be that change in their life. We want to say a huge thank you to you for the work you do. I know your dedication and commitment are beyond compared to anything I've seen. So thank you also on a personal note for, I know the work that you do day in and day out. I'd like to thank everybody for joining our session today. To our wonderful ASL interpreters who've been on with us, thank you for making sure everyone has accessibility to hear us and to know the conversation. And we look forward to continued conversations with you. And we'll rejoin the conference back at 3:15 after our break right now. And I can tell you hundreds of thank yous are coming through the chat. So wanted to make sure you knew that from everyone who's joined us today. Be well, everyone. Be safe. We'll see you back at the conference shortly. Bye-bye.